All right, welcome back. We are here on the RoofCon stage here at the ACS booth, and it's super cool to get to hang out with this group of people here because these guys are what I would call large loss experts through and through.
Isn't that your name? I feel like that's trademarked.
On Instagram and TikTok, that is my name.
Are we going to get a letter for that, Remington?
No, we'll be fine.
Okay. If we do, I'll let you handle it.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you. So, no, it's cool to have these guys here because you guys have a ton of knowledge and a ton of really cool stuff you guys are working on. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you guys to kind of learn a little bit what's going on right now, what's new, what's going on, because there's so many changes every year. And you guys are all really involved on the larger commercial loss side of the business. And so thank you for being here. So
yeah,
sure, glad to be here.
So let's dive right in. I know TJ, you've been out in Louisiana doing a lot of crazy stuff. What's going on, man? Give us an update. And you just had a baby. I saw it. Three-week-old baby's walking around in here somewhere.
He's already been to New Orleans too. So
you guys don't stop, bro.
Big storm, really big storm. Tons of everything: large commercial, small commercial, residential, specialty, historical, government. You name it. It's a big storm. It's all there. He wrote it out. I wrote it out. They were down closer to Homa, where it was really intense.
It was awesome.
I tried to work the side of the storm that still got a lot of damage, but not total devastation. And when it comes to large loss, a lot of times we're talking low slope, right? Because those things get really, really big. And it doesn't take a whole lot of wind to damage a low slope systems oftentimes, especially single ply, something like that. Wind-driven debris is usually going to punch holes somewhere like New Orleans. You get a lot of rain, you got a low slope system, you get some hydrostatic pressure, you get a new roof.
Right. It changes the whole, it's a whole different world though. And so that's cool to hear though that there's a lot of work out there for it and a lot of opportunity. But I think though, like a lot of contractors though, going into a situation like that, it's a little intimidating and it's a whole different world, but yet it seems to be the dream of a lot of contractors to get into the large loss world.
You know, the big challenge that I'm seeing really interestingly is something that none of us do, and it's the darn material side, right? Because if we're going to price something out, like how do you price it out? What materials are available? They aren't even available. If they are available, you're trying to come up with some system. When the materials are available, middle of next year, how much is the material and the labor going to cost for that project? Because when you're extrapolating, I've got one claim right now that's just shy of 17,000 squares. When you begin to extrapolate it over that, amount of roofing, some miscalculations in your pricing can really cause some huge issues.
Yeah, because it's going to be so huge at that point. One little mistake equals a lot.
The claim can remain open, though. I mean, it doesn't have to be closed out or settled in that moment. It can remain open until the cost is actually spent.
But how are you stopping the water intrusion, for example? Are you shrink wrapping them? Like, what are you doing?
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, you can use temporary repairs of any kind in order to, maintain the property as much as possible. You're required to mitigate. So, but in those cases, when the material cost is unknown, and whether or not it's going to take a long time, you are going to have a higher cost in temporary repairs as much as possible.
True.
If there even is temporary repair material available.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably get a whole bunch of the, what's that spray stuff?
Spray foam?
Flex Seal?
The
Flex Seal.
Flex Seal?
Yeah, that shit. You could spray the shit out of a flat roof. 17,000 squares of Flex Seal's got to be a huge claim, right? That's a large loss.
Well, then you got to worry about limits because we're actually hitting limits on that claim.
On the remediate or like the keeping it a certain way type mitigation?
Well, just on the roofing on this one, we're in the second excess policy. So there's a 10 million, then there's another 10 million excess and another 10 million excess because it's a big pool of properties and it's a per occurrence policy. So there's all of these weird situations you've got to figure out how to navigate. And we're already at limits without any mitigation. So if this would have been a really bad disaster and these properties would have had to have mitigation, they'd be in trouble.
Well, Remington, let me ask you this: what happens when there's excruciating circumstances like we're having now with the material shortages and different stuff like that that's causing these to drag out a lot longer? Are there ways to get those limits raised during these situations, or is that pretty much you're screwed?
every situation is different. And like TJ was saying, like Matt was saying, materials are shortened right now. So with that happening, I always use what we call the common sense discussion. Hey, courts, look, it's common sense. We can't get these materials until February, March of next year to actually put this policyholder in the pre-loss condition. And a lot of times the courts do agree with that. Because
so
every
do they make the
different.
limits higher then?
They will make. I've had it where they have made the limits higher. As TJ was saying, there's always these mitigation caps a lot of times, or they use the language reasonable amount of money or reasonable steps to take to actually put that policyholder and stop any type of leaks. So, have you seen that a lot where it's just reasonable rather than necessarily a cap on the actual mitigation? But no, you got to have a good attorney to argue the common sense of, look, we're going to have this tarp on this roof or whatever it is, a shrink wrap or something of that effect for 6 months because these materials aren't coming in. And like I said, the common sense argument typically works.
No kidding.
There are plenty of policies that have guaranteed replacement cost coverages as well that almost give it an unlimited limit because they guarantee that you will have enough coverage at that moment. And they don't anticipate these kind of scenarios in a lot of policies. I don't know that this happens very often where we have material shortages like we have. This is not just the hurricane, it's COVID that's also applying all this. So a reasonability issue is there. Can someone be made whole in the way that the policy was designed for in this circumstance? Not really.
Yeah.
Because there's additional costs associated with just getting to the point when they can be made whole. But the replacement cost provision that's in the policies, they're set at how much it would cost to actually make those replacements, not at how much it would cost to temporarily repair this whole thing for a matter of months, maybe a year, before we can even get materials. And whatever happens during that time, it's all part of direct physical loss. There's going to be additional damages. It's a screwy system, but an attorney can navigate those waters. Public adjuster's not doing that.
Yeah. John, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Right? With the insurance carrier. If you're spending all this money to mitigate the damages, or if you don't spend any money to mitigate the damages, they can kind of use it against you in two different ways. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But take care of the policyholder as a contractor, definitely.
Very true.
Mitigate the damages.
And so low slope roof, usually maybe you're going to do a loose lay. Shrink wrap's not the best for low slope, but usually a loose lay, a TPO or something like that if you can get a hold of it. And it's going to be the size of the roof, and I've seen them going for $600 a square down there. So you're going to burn up a lot of money on that temp stuff right now. And then when the materials are available, we know they're real expensive. How quickly are contractors getting paid for that temp repair, though? All across the board. If you're out there doing that kind of stuff, you're going to be putting some significant capital into it. And even if you're getting paid quickly, it's still going to take weeks or months to get paid. So you got to have a pretty hefty credit line or a ton of cash sitting around to even finance these types of deals to move into it. It's all a capital game. Down in the hurricane, most of the big contractors can get as much work as they want early on. It's how much can they cash flow and how long is it going to take to get it back. That's crazy.
So true, though.
It's a whole different world, man, than what we're used to. Oh yeah. From a residential going over to commercial side. So how important is it to have relationships with people like you guys, though?
Well, if you're my best friend, then you get cake on your birthday.
I didn't get cake on my birthday.
You're not my best friend?
I guess not.
Hey, if you're a contractor and you're doing large loss, have a great PA in your back pocket. Have a great attorney in your back pocket. That's in your arsenal, and you're going to need it. If you're in this insurance industry, at some point you're going to need to contact TJ Ware. You're going to need to contact Matt. Or an attorney to help you out. It's just part of this industry. So it's very important to have those relationships.
Yeah. If you're doing large claims and you're not hooked up in a network like that, I promise you're leaving a lot of money on the table.
Yeah.
And you're disadvantaging your customer by doing that because now that pie is a lot smaller and everybody wants a piece. Yeah, definitely.
I find that contractors that want to break into the large loss segment, they want to get into flat roofs where they haven't had that done before, a lot of them will just jump into it and think they're going to be able to figure it out as they go. And the reality is you're playing with a lot of dollars. You don't want to screw this up.
A lot of people go out of business doing that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
easily. You really need some training before you go into it, and there are training courses that are available for every aspect of this. The Commercial Roofing Academy teach you actually how to roof it.
Yeah.
You know, NCI we have a flat roof inspection course.
Yeah, which your guys' stuff, I was there Monday or Tuesday, and it was unreal. Like, I was so blown away at your public adjuster training.
Yeah, that was just Florida. Wait till we get the one that's nationwide.
Well,
And for
I mean, it
people
was so
out there, NCI's National Claims Institute.
yeah, sorry.
And there were contractors there, too.
There were a few contractors, even in our PA course. But the flat roof, the commercial low slope roof inspector 5-day certification course. You go in, we're going to teach you every type of flat roof system, what you're looking for damage-wise on those, what to document fully, what photos to take that you're going to need 3-4 months down the road that you don't want to have to go back out for.
I mean,
how to
I could do a
perform the
core
inspection.
sample. Not very good at it, but
Core
I can
sample's
do
not going
it.
to do you much good in a hail situation. It'll just tell you what the layers are. But sometimes you need to peel that membrane back to determine if there's any damage to the substrate.
To the ISO
You're not
and all
going to
that,
see any damage on the membrane often, especially if it's EPDM or something like that. I mean,
Especially if it's newer.
there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
A lot to it. So get some training before you jump into that, because you don't want to put yourself out of business going into a lot of this stuff.
That's a great point. I wonder how many single-ply roofs are sitting out there with damage that would get them replaced, but the roofer went out there and didn't see any fractures in that membrane and said, no, your roof's fine.
Thousands and thousands.
But yet their R values diminished.
Sure.
They're not really getting the true worth out of that roof at that point because of the storm.
And that's a
many
cover.
things.
You know, most policies are going to have coverage for hail. So if hail damages that roofing system, another thing about low slope is a lot of times it's opening that coverage door. Like once you open that coverage up, if you've got a leaking issue anywhere, it migrates on a flat roof, and then you've got code compliant. And a big part of a lot of commercial policies, and a huge thing that we use to our benefit and benefit the contractor and the property owner, is ordinance and law code upgrade coverage. Code upgrade coverage is huge sometimes on some of these commercial policies. I have claims where we'll add $5 or $6 or $7 million to the claim just in code upgrade, and it's like that money gets added out of thin air, and it's great for everybody.
And TJ, you know how many people miss that?
All the time, because you don't get it unless you ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's different, by the way. If you know ordinance and law code upgrade coverage for residential, it's completely different for the commercial policies. Don't think that they're the same. It's a common misconception.
It's interesting. It's just a whole different world, and there's so many different pitfalls. And I feel like you have to have such a higher level of knowledge and expertise to really do a good service for your customers. And at the end of the day, that's what they want, though. And then that opens the door to such a whole different world.
You do a good job on your first one.
Yeah.
These business owners, they talk to each other.
And they own several properties a lot of
They own
times.
a lot of
too.
properties.
Yeah.
They have a portfolio.
You just got to do it right that first time.
Breaking into commercial really is about partnering with the right people. Almost everybody that I know that has broken into commercial successfully has been willing to make a little bit less to learn a whole lot more and partner with somebody who's really good at it, has the bankroll, knows how to do it, and can add that stability to the situation. Because making a flat roof or a low slope roof watertight is a lot harder than making a steep roof watertight.
Right.
It's true. Absolutely.
No, it's definitely something to think about for sure. So I want to open it up, though, see if there's any questions here from any of the people here that want to have any questions about low slope, about commercial losses, large loss. If you do, Abdel's got a mic. He can get you guys. We want to make sure we capture that. So if you have any questions, you want to learn about it, these guys are literally the experts when it comes to that, when it comes to policy, language, everything else. But in the meantime, though, this is one of those things, though, that I think a lot of contractors do want to get into, but they're intimidated by it. So for sure, what are some of the changes that we're seeing right now, though, today, this year versus years past?
Well, when it comes to contractors, I'm going to have to say this, that go to American Contractors Spotify and check out the podcast on the new laws here in the state of Florida that they're trying to implement. I mean, there's He has great content on there, and it's an hour, 15 minutes long.
This is from you. The content was on your side.
Well, we did it together. But just drilling on these new laws in Florida. We're here in Orlando right now live, so I just want to bring that to everybody's attention. Great content. Definitely listen to it. It'll put you on the right track.
And even if you're not in Florida or you're not a Florida contractor, I still think it's really important that you pay attention to Florida. Because what we find with Florida, Texas, some of these major states is what they do in states like this typically starts to move across the country. What you're seeing coming out of Florida right now is the intentions of the insurance lobbyists. And
battleground state.
It's a battleground state. Yeah, like what they're fighting for and what they're trying to do, they're testing the waters. They're seeing what they can get away with in Florida. If it sticks, you're gonna start to see this. Where you start to, percentage deductibles started here. Roof payment schedule started here. Roof exclusion started here. Now we're seeing them. My roof in Indiana.
That's not 100%.
Well, it's close.
There are states where the roof payment schedules definitely appeared prior to Florida having them.
And that could be the case. But I'm saying, but just in general, though, when you start to see this type of legislation come out, you're basically seeing what the carriers are trying to get away with.
I think that's true for the most part. So there's a reason for that. Florida has very favorable laws for policyholders. It's a high leverage state for people on the policyholder side. So if the legislature is able to get something passed that doesn't benefit the policyholder, that benefits the carrier side, then they can use that to say, hey, even in this very policyholder friendly state, the legislature deemed it necessary to do this for these reasons. We need to go ahead and do that in our states as well to stay ahead of the times. But there are certain things that they try out in the other states that would never pass in Florida, but it becomes persuasive
for precedent setting
purposes. And there's a lot of states that are very, very low leverage, that have very little policyholder favorable laws, that get a lot of that bullshit. And then it's passed down to all the other states, and then he eventually moves into Florida. And the roof payment schedule is one of those things.
Yeah. I have one at my house.
Do you really?
Yep. After 15 years, which I just bought a new house. I checked my policy out. After 15 years, it's an ACV roof. And I have an RPS on the back end of it.
So after 15 years, it becomes RPS?
Yep.
So you're going to switch, though. You're going to switch.
Yeah, I'm going to switch. But my roof's only like 4 years old, so right now I don't care. But in 11 years, if I still live in that house, I'm going to switch.
I have a metal roof, and I've had to shop really hard to get a policy without a cosmetic exclusion. I don't want to have to deal with that BS, but not in Texas. It's a very limited number of carriers that are even offering that. So it's important to know that stuff.
But John, you're right. Where do you think hurricane deductibles came from? Right? It didn't come from, right?
That's true.
You're right. Florida, Texas, pioneer states when it comes to this insurance industry. Certainly is.
It's definitely such a weird thing to look at, but I also think you got to start to learn more about financing, incorporating other methods of business. There's all kinds of stuff that comes to that, but that's on the residential side. On the commercial side, do you see a lot of financing happening? A lot of times where an insured just says, you know what, let's just replace it. I'm going to pay out of pocket, get it done, and then I'll take the insurance proceeds.
That happens quite often. And it's odd, the motivations that a business owner has on the commercial side versus
it's totally different.
They don't
different
live
goals.
There. Yeah, they have different goals. There might be AC units that are owned by unit owners, and they don't give a shit if they get replaced or not, or leased.
Yeah.
And if you spend 6 months trying to get the AC units replaced because of condenser fins and whatnot, that business owner is going to get pissed off.
So you got to find out what their true intentions are. It's a whole different type of conversation.
Completely different. So, but if you know that up front, know that really they just want to maintain the value of the property more than anything else. You'll be fine.
So I really enjoy sales in the large law space. I like doing sales and business development. And one thing that I have learned is that oftentimes the people who are in charge of, let's say, the roof repairs, for buildings within a company or organization, they may have gone to business school.
Yeah.
They understand depreciation. They understand CapEx, and they're setting aside money to make these repairs. Insurance claims are usually way far at the back of their mind, and they don't have a real good understanding of them. So sometimes I can come in and explain to them, listen, let us let us get this approved. You don't have to come out of pocket anything right now. You weren't planning to replace this roof for another 5 years, but you got $3 million sitting over there that's earmarked for this. So if we get all of this paid for, maybe you go back to the company and say, hey guys, we got $3 million extra bucks. What do you want to do with it? What you did is you aligned that person's interest with yourself now, because you realize they can be a hero and they can all of a sudden make $3 million appear out of thin air for the company, because they're never looking at insurance claims. You know, the headquarters may be somewhere where they don't get help. And their building in Texas got damaged. I have one a mile from my house, $2.6 million claim. Roofer did all the temporary repairs, fixed all the skylights. The C-suite is in Tokyo. And I talked to the CFO, and I said, hey, you know, I think we can probably get you $2.5, $3 million for this roof. And he laughed at me. He said, there's no way in the world an insurance company is going to pay $2.5 million for that roof. And what I realized is that if you don't experience hell and those things aren't common where you live, then it just sounds unfathomable that ice balls will fall from the sky and that your insurance company will give you $3 million because of it. And so those are some different kind of challenges you have to think of when we're talking about big companies, asset managers, things like that.
The psychology is so different.
It's amazing how much damage balls can do in your life.
Oh, believe me, I know.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Watch his show.
Yeah, you got to.
Go listen to that bull. Anyways. All right, any questions real quick about any of this stuff, about the psychology of these guys? We got a
question here.
Oh, we got a question here.
Someone asked how to get a customer to pursue their entire roof loss, like your church.
I'll tell you, I'm really into the sales side of it, right? So if you've got a commercial large loss anywhere in the country, I will go help you close that. If it's a closable deal, I'll close 90% or better if it's closable. And part of the reason is because you're telling that person how you can do this and how great you are and all of that. But when you bring in a third party who's more of an expert in that realm, you have a lot better chance of getting traction with that owner and convincing them that this is the right path to take. It's not just one guy saying it, it's multiple guys, and it's someone who has experience doing this across the country.
I've witnessed TJ close some deals. It's actually pretty impressive. You are a really good sales guy.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
No, that's a good thing, and I think churches are a whole different conversation. I've actually worked at some churches in the past, and I've been on church, staffs and different stuff too, and been on that side of it. So I understand like where their mindset is. Churches are typically run two different ways. You have a board-run church, and then you have like a pastor-led, kind of like a CEO-led type church,
right,
with the pastor serving in that capacity. And they both have different. You got to figure that part out first, I think. Once you understand how they're built and what type of organization structure they have for their business side of their church, that'll help you kind of get into that. If it's a board, you got to figure out who's on that board, who's got the most influence on that board, and what they're trying to accomplish.
It's never the person that speaks the most.
No, it's not usually.
Never.
It's not. You got to get into the politics of that a little bit, and then you can kind of work your way in because you may think it's this board member, but it's really this guy over here. You got to dig a little bit and learn a lot about it. If it's the pastor, then you got to align with the congregation and align more with the pastor and his values and figure it out. And there's always going to be influential people in churches. It's a whole different world.
Denomination matters.
Denomination matters.
There's two major denominations. Both of them embrace very large families that are very reluctant to fight their insurance companies.
Like I've worked with the Catholic Church before. Catholic churches are self-insured a lot of time through the diocese, which ultimately all that money goes back to Rome. And so you got to figure out what they're really trying to accomplish. And it's a whole different
self-insured.
They're self-insured, though, yeah. So
I think that what I've experienced on churches is you just have to realize that most of the time, treat it like a business.
Yeah.
Stop thinking of it like a church. It's got a commercial policy. It is treated like a business. The money coming into that church is treated as income.
And they have CapEx. They have their own capital expenditure,
most of the time,
projects,
boards,
everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly the same sales tactic.
And a lot of times their margins are thinner, so insurance work, when presented the right way, can be very effective with churches.
Very effective with churches. It's a whole different, but you got to understand the dynamics of how they work and study that congregation a little bit.
There's also usually usually a roofer in the congregation.
There is, and you got to go up against that guy too. And sometimes, but churches sometimes are very reluctant to do business with their own church members.
Yep, true.
So you may have to go to a few services just to understand what's going on at that church and how it's structured to get a good feel for it. Because some churches, they're all for leaving the business in house. Some churches, like the church I go to now, they are very reluctant to use any people within the church to do finances or do anything that has to do with the business of the church.
And I can say this on the legal side of things when it comes to a church. Insurance companies hate litigating against a church. I mean, I have, knock on wood, but I've never had a church that did not settle out at top dollar type price. So you as a contractor, get PA, Matt, or TJ
And they use
involved.
a lot of insurance carriers that aren't typical, like Church
Well,
Mutual.
right.
and the church insurance carriers are usually some of the worst and toughest carriers out there.
There's like a Mennonite one, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of them.
There's a good handful that are just specific church.
Yeah.
sure,
Rough.
for sure.
It surprises you every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Well, and it's because they're really looking at different risks differently than we are. So it's weird. It's a whole different world.
It's a lot of bullshit, is what it is. I mean, it's
But you got to look at the same, like Matt said. You got to look at the structure of the business, the church, whatever, and get that feel for it, and then understand who's really making decisions. Because you may think it's the CEO, but it could just be the COO or the CFO that's really running that company.
Right.
So you got to learn all the ins and outs. So
I got to
cool.
run to a breakout. We're
Thank
here
you guys for being here.
at RoofCon.
Yeah, we're at RoofCon. The breakouts are getting ready to start. Any other questions real quick? We got another one here.
Conrad.
Hey, good seeing you, buddy.
See you, TJ.
With the rising trend of carriers only, for the majority of the time, pushing for repairs and insisting upon those repairs, what do you see for the future of the industry? Where do you see that taking us?
So just to brief that question, you're asking insurance carriers are always just trying to pay for repairs rather than replacement?
It seems like the rising trend right now, especially with Big Red.
Especially on large loss. I can't agree with you more, Conrad. For instance, speaking of churches, I mean, it's a large church in Atlanta right now, and the carrier is just trying to pay, I think it's like $350,000. Well, the roof is about a $5 million roof. But guess what? 80% of the time, they get away with that. I mean, they do. Then they save hundreds of millions of dollars doing that over and over again. That's why I keep on saying it, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but as a contractor, have a good PA in your back pocket. Go fight it and go get that roof replaced.
What can we do to educate ourselves more to be able to rely upon ourselves to fight those without having to get third parties involved?
leave it to Conrad to give us the biggest softball ever.
Go for it.
Well, there is the National Claims Institute. If you want to get some legitimate training and certifications, you could take the. Thanks, Conrad. That was great.
I think it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a
I
good
think it's
question.
a great question.
There are many, many different places you can get good education. This industry does have a lot available, but you do have to seek it out. I think it's worth slowing down what you're doing to learn so that ultimately you can speed up.
It's an investment.
It is an investment.
It's education. I always believe that education is paid for one way or another. You're either paying for it through trial and error, School of Hard Knocks. That costs you time and it costs you energy and it costs you money. Don't kid yourself. You pay for it through employment. You go work for someone and you learn how to do it the right way. And that costs you because you're working for someone else, so you're splitting your investment.
Building their brand for
Yeah,
them.
you're building their brand for them, and that's a great way to pay for an education.
Yep.
Or you take courses and you invest and you go, and that's, I think, the fastest way to learn is to throw out $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and put it into training. And I mean, that's how you became an attorney, I bet, right?
Oh, yeah.
And if you could
Have
skip
to.
5 years
Yeah.
of hard knock education,
That's what you're doing.
$40,000. How much money are you saving in the stupid tax?
Yep,
You know?
tons. And time. Time is the biggest. I think
Yeah.
time is the most expensive thing that people don't account for.
100%. True.
So you're gonna pay for your education, but investing, finding out the right tools. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. I think what a lot of people, CMR, you talked about them.
Yeah.
That's Commercial Roofing Academy, CRA. They're amazing. I love Paul. I think he's got some great stuff. Steve Patrick's got over there with that. You got your stuff. I mean, there's so many ways to learn, and we have so many more options now than we've ever had.
So true.
ever had in our industry.
Absolutely.
So it's a great time to get into that stuff.
Ultimately, networking is also a great idea.
Yeah, just
most
hang out
people
with
in
the
this
people.
industry are so willing to help each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spend time.
We've become somewhat of a tight-knit community somehow.
We are, and
I think
it's
it's
great. It's phenomenal that we have all these minds collaborating instead of working against each
There you
other. So
I hear Matt Barron say that all the time. Collaboration.
collaboration
Collaboration.
it
really,
multiplies the growth exponentially so much quicker.
yeah.
I shared a hotel room with him once, and he was saying that in his sleep.
Is that what he's? Man,
Never a dull moment with Matt.
He's
Matt,
weird.
Matt and Matt in a hotel room talking about collaboration in their sleep.
2 T's, 1 T, just hanging out.
I didn't think I lost
Just
that.
collaborating. All right. On that note, this has been a great panel. TJ, you're not here, but thank you for being here with us and spending some time. Matt, Remington, these are some of the best guys. Go listen to you guys' show. Listen to this bull. It's on Tuesdays. I think you're changing that, right?
No, it's going to be Tuesdays, but
Okay.
we're looking into changing the time much later in the day so that people can get off work before it
Well,
airs.
you're also East Coast, so you got to think
We're
about
East
those
Coast.
people like in Colorado.
I think I was half retarded when I set it up, thinking that
Don't
time zones
You know
work
what?
backwards.
All that stuff can change. You know, I remember
Yeah.
when Full House in the '90s went from one time to another time, and it ruined my entire life. So,
I'm going to ruin your life again.
thank you. Appreciate that. So,
Thanks for having us,
No,
John.
thank you guys for being here. It's so great, and this has been awesome. We'll be back again in a few minutes. We've got Ben Manchaka, and we've got.